which might be controversial here, is that God never invented money. So what happened before money? Because if you begin to understand that, you begin to realize the focus on money is very limiting. You just exclude everything else. Money is a reward. It is a currency of tender that was invented and can be replaced. There are times in Europe's history, and I'm sure in Nigeria's history, where money has failed countries. Go and ask Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe, where their currency was in trillions and billions. You want to make a small transaction, you need a truckload of cash to make that transaction. Money can fail you. Money's value is determined by all sorts of things outside of your control. Money's value is determined by governments, good and bad. So today, your 10 million naira cannot buy what your 5,000 naira used to buy 30 years ago. Money can fail you. When I think about this topic, and I'm grateful for all those inputs, a couple of things come to my mind. My grandmother used to say to us, "Enyo, la enyo," which, to be honest, as a young boy, I didn't really fully understand. I understand it now. What that translates to in English, right, is people are the clothes you wear. People are what adorns you as a person. People is what covers your shame. People is what makes you appear significant. And these are my extensions, right? Because clothes cover your nakedness, right? Clothes also make you distinguished in company, right? So depending on what you wear, people can address you on that basis. People are significantly important. Now, I've given you a sense of my sort of drawings from my language. Is there anyone that is non-Yoruba here that can give me or give us some sort of concept around social capital that can help us understand? Because this English that we speak is very confusing, right? And until we begin to understand things from our local dialect, our understanding is still at surface level. Is there any non-Yoruba who can give us a word or a concept or a description about what's your capital, the importance of human relations and connections, what it means? Does that mean that there are no non-Yorubas in here?
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
My people used to say...
Who are your people?
Ibibio.
Ibibio people.
Ibibio from Akwa Ibom State.
Yes.
Owo Odinyene. Owo Odinyene means people are wealth.
People.
It's your wealth. Like
people are
your
wealth.
wealth by the people you have.
Please say that phrase again. Owo Dineye.
Owo Adi Nyene. Owo Dinyene.
Your wealth. So you see that it's not the English that came from and teach us this thing. Any other languages represented that can help us fully understand and the link between people? Ahead. Who you be, who you get. Hey. Tie. Who you be, who you get. Okay, let me consult my notes. More important than money. A child is greater than wealth. So, for me, this is really something that is core to me, because I honestly believe that if we understand these things, the way we organize our lives will be different. The and be kind. The pursuit of money really comes from the fact that how can I say this and be kind? Okay, will you forgive me if I offend you with what I'm saying? The pursuit of money is a real lack of understanding, right? Because money, right, is a reward. So you've got to think to yourself, what attracts money? What attracts your ability to transact? What attracts your ability to achieve your goals? I think this gentleman was talking about the fact that people are money. I struggle with that. And the reason why I wanted to tell you my name is that I think it's important that we see people as more than money. People can give you access to all sorts of resources. But the way you cultivate your relationship with them to be able to leverage that, and that is the distinction between social capital and social currency, which I'll help you define in a second. Comes that does not give them the impression that the only reason why you're in their life is because of what you can get from them. That's why we make a living by what we get, but a life by what we give. We make a living by what we get. And this is where the confusion of the pursuit of money comes from. The reality is our needs, housing, education, fees, all these respond. This is where the fixation with getting money comes from, right? But I think, this lady said that money was the lowest form of capital. The reality is, for economists that are in the room who understand the history of money, they realize that what we call money today, the cash, the currency in our pockets, was essentially a receipt, right, for money, for real capital that we have lodged somewhere else. That's why if you look at your banknote, it says we promise to pay the bearer. So the cash is not the capital. It is evidence that you have capital. Do you understand? The cash, it's difficult to understand, right? Because the truth of the matter is that we have equated cash with money. But the cash you have, I don't have any cash on me, I would have brought it out to explain. The cash you have is essentially an acknowledgement of the value you possess. Do you want me to repeat that? The cash that is in your bank account is an acknowledgement of the value that you possess. But we have established today that even that cash is not all the value that you possess. And what we're saying is that you have greater value locked into the relationships that you have. So, if I'm going to define for you what social capital is, by definition, we know it's really about our networks. It's the relationships that we have, the people who can call on us and people who we can call on. And all of this is really crucially built on trust. And I think this is what Daniel was teaching you guys. And in some ways, I always say trust is a currency. And this, if you're someone of a Christian persuasion, is the reason why you don't play with integrity. Because trust is currency. Cutting corners, doing things that get you cash faster at the cost of trust and integrity really gives you a sense that these concepts that we're teaching are not yet mastered or implemented in you, because you are able to give weight to the short-term gain of cash, which is a depletable asset. Once it's gone, it's gone. If I was to give you 10 million naira today, 100 million naira, right? I'm sure anyone who received that money would be very happy. I certainly would. And I can think about what I can do with that kind of money. But the reality is that right now, if you give me 100 million naira, I promise you I can spend it in an hour. Less. It might take you a little bit longer to spend it. In fact, if I give you 100 million naira, what would you spend it on? Let me ask that question. How long would it take for you to spend 100 million naira? And what would you spend it on? Yes, there's a lady behind me there.
First, I'll buy a land, and I'll build a very big farm. And I'll get livestock. I'll go to the north and get cow, sheep. I'll get a lot of livestock. Then I will now build a very fancy house in between where I will live. And I think 100 million wouldn't be enough.
Would not be enough. So 100 million would not be enough. And I think that lady probably needs 10 minutes to spend that 100 million based on her well-developed plans. And she'll still be asking for, where's the rest? And it is the where is the rest that I want to focus on today. No amount of cash, right, is inexhaustible. Go and ask Dangote. No amount of cash is inexhaustible. So Dangote has built the largest train refinery in Africa, and claims are in the world. But I was part of his delegation a couple of years ago, I think it was 2 to 3 years ago, to Oxford, when Oxford were looking to snap him up for some philanthropy. And he was interviewed, and the man was not the man you see today. He was highly stressed. This was before the NNPC bailout. I know Benaboy says Dangote defined money, but at that point he did not have all the cash that he needed. Is that can you process that in your mind? Cash is a finite resource, and he was able to raise that cash through his network. Afrexim Bank, NNPC, these are individuals, people who he could tap onto, give something in return for what he needed. This is how social capital works. It is not for people who are just fixated on what they can get. You don't get substantial things without giving something. So when I use the Dangote example, I need to break it down. What did Dangote give NNPC for the cash that they gave him? I don't know is an answer. What did Dangote give NNPC for the cash that they gave him or promised him? This gentleman needs a mic.
For me, it's a good connection and a good relationship.
Okay, so you're saying that Dangote gave good connection.
Like, he has something to offer.
What did he have to offer? What did he give? It is the connection that gave him the opportunity to actually have the conversation. Do you guys understand that? How many of us can walk into an NPC now and say, give me 200 million? So you're right. It is that reputation. It is that good graces. It is the knowledge of the people. It is the effort that he has made in placing people in strategic positions. Which makes me think of our president. How did he get into Asura? Can you see why Pastor Kemi is suggesting that you guys learn this thing? And stop chasing money. So Dangote offered shares and was able to, set out the value that those shares would have to NNPC strategically, return on investment, etc., etc. For Afrexim Bank, he offered the ability and capacity to pay back any loans that he got, because he had a track record of doing exactly that. If Dangote was known for not paying his loans, would he get that Afrexim loan? Social capital is about networks, it's about relationships, it's about trust, and crucially, it's about reciprocity. I think it was the lady that talked about the fact that the relationships you are permitted to have really comes from people wanting you to be in their circle. Why would people want you in their circle? And why are you not in other people's circle? Ask yourself that question. I want to be rolling with Dangote. You might be saying, I want to be invited to travel with him on his private jet, in his car. Why have you not got that invitation? It's a question now. Why? Do you think when he was looking for money and you had the ability to give him that money, do you think that it would be a difficulty to get into his circle? Do you think while he was fundraising for that refinery or any other thing he's fundraising for, and you had the solution to that, do you think it will be difficult? We need to be honest with ourselves. The circles that we are in reflect the value that we bring. They reflect the difference that we can make in the lives of the people around us. I'm not saying that to condemn us. I'm saying that to challenge us, because I honestly believe that because we are a life-giving spirit, our ability to reflect value is infinite, but requires a focus on us and the value that we bring and the value that is required. So, if I want to be in Dangote's circle, and I don't want to give you the impression that I am. I'm not. I'm one layer removed. The chairman of our board is his childhood friend, which is how, we get access when we need it. But you know what? Does not mean we abuse it. I have no business. And that's what I'm trying to teach you guys now. I have zero business sending you a text and saying, "Happy Sunday, sir." I have zero business. Because what that does is depletes from my own value. Because it makes me like everybody else that greets him and say, "Happy New Month, Happy New Month." No value to add. No understanding of the issues and challenges that I'm facing that I need help with. So the fact that someone is in your network does not mean you need to be in their space. That is what I'm trying to say today, because you have to give first before you receive. That is when it is sustainable. That is when it is dignified. That is when it adds value. Social currency, if I'm going to make a distinction, is how you actually derive value from your connections. And that is really the key function of today, this idea that you have to give. You know, we all have the potential to be generous beings. And I know that probably when this went out, there might have been a sense that, you know, this is going to be someone that's trying to collect an offering. And you know, my sense is that your giving should not stop at all. Your giving, if we understand this concept, your giving should be really where the source of your wealth is. Now, one of the key examples that I wanted to share was an example of something that I witnessed in I believe it was a cathedral, St. Paul's Cathedral, probably about 10, 15 years ago. It was John Sentamo. He was leading out a conversation about how to end extreme poverty in the world. And he took out a piece of bread. Now, there were probably about 2,000, maybe 3,000 people in the cathedral. About 2,000, maybe a little bit less. And we thought he was going to speak for about half an hour or whatever. He didn't. He just said, look, people ask me the question, how do we end extreme poverty? And his minders brought bread, and he broke that bread. Gave one half to one minder, gave another half to another minder. And he said, what I want you to do is take this piece of bread, break it, and give it to the person next to you. And one way or the other, with probably 6, maybe 10 loaves of bread, everybody in that room had a piece of bread. We all have the power and the ability to be generous. We all have something to give. And the reality is that when we withhold that, we do ourselves more damage than we realize. When our minds are only fixated on what we can get, we really confine ourselves to what we have. We talked a bit about how President Bola Ahmed Tinubu became president. Whether you like him or not, whether you are with his party or not, whether you are feeling the brunt of his policies, or you're looking at it from a long-term point of view, all those perspectives are valid. And I'm not here to invalidate any of those perspectives. I'm here to focus on the fact that in our lifetime, he's probably someone that I look at that understands this concept of social capital more than anyone else. The investment that he has made in people remind me of only Moshood Kashimao Abiola, Kolawole Abiola. He also was an investor in people, investor in relationships. And the reality is that when people see that you genuinely care about them, when people see that you are genuinely always looking for how you can add value, when people see how you are looking to always go over and above, right? The human mind wants to reciprocate. The human psyche wants to make sure that they can engage with you. So how do we give? I hope I've made the case that, look, the foundation of social capital is giving. The foundation of social capital is giving. And that, my brother, is why I had a little bit of an allergic reaction to people and money. I don't invalidate that statement. That statement is true. But my perspective is, if I want whatever that relationship has, I have to figure out what I can give. That is my perspective. My perspective is that if I want to get into your orbit, I have to understand what's happening in his world. What does he need? What is not quite complete? And how can I be a solution provider, someone who can assist? And until I do that, my relationship is platonic. What all of us can do is we can give our time. I have 17 minutes left, just in case I don't finish. We can all give our time. We can all give our talent. We can all give our treasure. Time. I say this to people who have more time than money. And there are two things that you can do with your time. If you have a vision, and I hope that everybody does, because a vision is a picture of a future that you desire, a future that you are committed to. And if your future, if your plans require treasure that you don't have, right? Require talents that you don't yet have, you have time. My advice is, give that time to someone who is on a similar journey, but perhaps has slightly more resources than you do, so that you can develop the talent, the abilities that you need to bring forward that vision that you have. Everybody say time. You have time. And this is that point about serving. When you serve, I remember years ago when, like Pastor Kemi, I went out with, at my pastor's instance, and planted a church in a town on the west of London called Uxbridge, which I love a great deal because I went to university in that town, so I was really tied to it. And I remember what God said to me at the time. He says, as you build this church, I will build your life. All I had to give was time. I had a job, so I had a little bit of resources. But the majority of what I gave was my time. And in that time, I developed skills, I developed networks, I developed abilities that I've traded on since. It was in that church that we launched the World Changers Foundation, that over a period of 10 years took hundreds of young people across Europe on a 4 to 8 week experiential leadership program in South Africa, in Durban. Such an investment in time, in resources, to help young people that I just knew that we had the ability to change their lives. And it's interesting. I can tell you stories and stories and stories of how some of these young people are connectors for me today. Our biggest partner from South Africa came from Ben Pullen, who rang me 3-4 years ago and said, look, he's now in South Africa, he's running this Smart Mobility Africa conference, and he wondered if I can help because they have a financing element to it. And he felt that as I'm a PPP expert, that I could probably help them think through how they might be able to do it. So yeah, he's one of my guys. So as far as I'm concerned, one, I'm glad he's doing something fantastic. I'm glad that he's, for whatever reason, he caught the Africa bug, which is what I hoped that they would get. I hoped 20 years ago that they would get the Africa bug. He got the Africa bug, and he was trying to build something there. Anyway, long and short of the story, he connected me with someone on his team who was just thinking about, this isn't being recorded, right, is it? Okay. Yeah, if you can, please. I was going to ask whether I could share freely or generically. Yeah, stop it. Okay. So, and maybe it'll become clear why I want it stopped. So, they were thinking about this concept called the Africa Green Economy Summit. And over the last 3 years, you would have heard quite a lot about climate finance, et cetera, et cetera. It was a growing field, and we are, people who are helping to make that happen. Anyway, long and short of it, we had a conversation